Alhamdulillahi wahda, wassalatu wassalamu ala man la nabiyya ba'da, amma ba'd. Tawassul or wasila means to get through to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala through a medium, a means, through some extra resources in order to ensure that dua or the supplication you are making to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gets accepted. We do that in different forms. So Muslim, when they supplicate to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, which is the essence of the worship, we do in certain different ways. You ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you implore Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you beseech Him depending on the need that you have or you feel that you have and how dire the situation is. Sometimes you call Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala upon with His blessed names, beautiful names. Ya Allah, accept my dua. O Rahman, have mercy on me. Ya Ghafurur Rahim, forgive me. So you implore Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala by using those beautiful names of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala or His blessed attributes. This is by consensus of Ummah, accepted and valid, and in fact you cannot do without. Generally, without calling upon Allah with His beautiful name, that is how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants us to do. It is unfathomable how else would you call upon Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala if you do not say, Ya Allah, accept my dua. Then your good deeds. There's a hadith in Sahih al-Bukhari. The hadith is famously known as Hadith al-Ghar, whereby three men were stuck in a cave, and they presented their good deeds to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, which they hoped would be accepted by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Alhamdulillah, they managed to get that stone moved away from them. So hadith is agreed upon, Sahih, hence Ummah agree that you can present to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala your own good deeds and say, Ya Allah, my so and so action, if you accepted it, or if that was done with sincerity, kindly sort my problem out, get me out of this trial and tribulation. Then there is another way whereby you ask someone else to make dua on your behalf. So you ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, so, oh Allah, accept my dua, which I know that you would respond to anyway, because you said in the Quran, oh Allah, ujibu da'wat ad-da'i idha da'an, whenever a caller calls upon me, I respond to it. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would definitely respond to the question, will definitely respond to the question that the slave has. Now, but we find ourselves to be a bit weak, lowly, not the best, even at the best of times. So we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's favors and mercy upon us, and we need them. So we ask our friends, family members, our parents, someone righteous and pious around us, someone in the community, Imam of the masjid. So the saintly, godly people, you ask them, oh so and so, please make dua. Oh my brother, please make dua that I get it. And we all make dua, alhamdulillah. Sayyidina Umar radiallahu ta'ala anhu, when he went to perform Umrah, Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam asked him, so, oh my brother, don't forget me in your dua. Obviously, Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam was giving a, adab, an etiquette, that when you see someone coming to a blessed place, which is Makkah, performing Umrah, the chances of him having his dua accepted is higher. So I'm actually asking him, so you should ask people to make dua for yourself. You do dua as well, obviously, but that's most of the time. But sometimes you want someone else to make dua as well. It's not absolute that you have to, it's not a must that you have to have any wasila like this, but if you do it, that's good. There's no harm. So these are all accepted and agreed upon issues. There's a fourth category which is differed upon. it was agreed upon in the first four, even 7 centuries, and the scholars had no problem with that. But Imam ibn Taymiyyah rahmatullah alayhi was the first Imam who actually categorically disallowed it. And that is based on not a clear-cut proof either way, but rather what we call the difference of nas fahmi, understanding the text. So what would happen? People would then understand a text differently. There are two extremes to this. I will come to that in a minute. But before that, what is this fourth type? This fourth type of wasila is where you ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So you're asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, not anyone else obviously, otherwise it would be shirk. So you ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for an action to be accepted, considering the lofty status of a pious deceased person. If that pious person was alive, you can do so by consensus. It's all okay. It is permissible. The story of Sayyidina Umar radiyallahu anhu. During the time of his caliphate, there was a drought and famine. So he made dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in Salatul Istisqa, which he was leading the rain prayer. So he got Sayyidina Abbas radiyallahu anhu, the uncle of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, saying, Ya Allah, when Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam was amongst us, we used to make dua through his lofty status and close connection with you. Now we have got his uncle. So we implore you that you bless us with rain. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala obviously helped them with that. So this is the incident which actually some people take to mean that had it been okay in the eyes of Sayyidina Umar radiyallahu ta'ala anhu to implore Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with the closeness or connection of the pious people who passed away, including Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam or any prophet or pious people, he would have done it through Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Why would he resort to the uncle who is living? And when you look at that incident and this argument, it feels a bit plausible. Yes, why not? But there are two very important points to this. Number one, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam left the world, and Sayyidina Umar is now asking or bringing the uncle to the place where they were making dua in that field. Did Sayyidina Umar say that I could not make dua with the right of Rasulullah or with the blessings or with the connection of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam as he has passed away? That is why I am asking you through Sayyidina Abbas radiyallahu ta'ala anhu. Clearly not. He didn't say that. He didn't say it's impermissible. It is an inference which may be right, which may be wrong. It is 50-50. We don't know. This is not an evidence. It could be used both ways. It is not categorical either way. Rather, he was trying to teach that you do not have to have only Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam from the pious people, although he is the master and the most pious person ever to be, yet it is not absolute, or it is not a condition that you can only ask from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala via Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, but any other person who is pious, you can do the same too. So that is his point, Sayyidina Umar radiyallahu ta'ala anhu. The other important point to take into consideration is this fact that, as I said, people go into two different extremes. On one hand, there are people who would make wasila as if you do not do it, your dua would not be accepted. They emphasize it to the point where it sounds like without doing a wasila with the right of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam or of the pious people, your dua will never be accepted. So they equate it. In fact, there are some extremists who would go to the extent where they would say bijahin Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam, not to mean only tawassul, but rather saying, oh, this is the right of so and so, of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam upon you, O Allah. Bihaqqin Nabiyyi, the right of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Obviously, when the scholars, the pious Imam of the past, they use these words, bijahin Nabi or bihaqqin Nabi, they do not mean that there is a right of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam or any pious people over Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, which Allah has to accept through, which Allah has to fulfill, or Allah is bound to do. They don't mean that. This is just a way of saying it, suggesting, Ya Allah, you know, you have love for Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, you have love for these pious awliya. You said, Ala inna awliya Allah la khawfun alayhim wa lahum yahzanun. So you said all those things, beautiful things. You love your pious people who dedicated their lives for you, for your cause, for Islam. So clearly, when we make dua through them, you would accept it. So they do not actually mean that. But when we, some of the, as I said, some of the people who have gone a bit extreme, they consider or they feel that way. There's a possibility that they may feel that way, that there is a right that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala must follow. Otherwise, as if, na'udhu billah, Allah is bound by that. So obviously nothing can bound Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And so with that in mind, Imam Abu Hanifa rahmatullah alayh wouldn't want people to do wasila with pious deceased people, people who passed away, because people started feeling that way, as if there is a right over Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that He must fulfill. So clearly that is wrong understanding, but Imam Abu Hanifa wanted to correct that. That's why he said don't do it that way. But all the Hanafis afterwards accepted it is perfectly fine to do so. Imam Malik, same opinion, that you can do tawassul through the pious people who passed away, including any pious people, obviously more so Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. There are certain people, certain Imams who would say, just do it with Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, not with anyone else. But Ummah as a whole agreed that it is perfectly fine to make dua. Obviously, if there was any concern, then we would try to correct it. So one of the problems was that people went this way, and then they actually made it a must as a right of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam or the pious people upon Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, which clearly is wrong. Or they felt that without having tawassul, without making wasila, your dua will not be accepted. Again, that is a wrong, faulty understanding. The first one is actually a bigger problem. The second one is a problem as well. You are making something obligatory which is not obligatory. So you're making something as a condition which is not the case. So that notion needs to be corrected as well. That is why some scholars would say, no, don't do it. And that is why you find the scholars make it clear that it is recommended, it is a good thing, yet not a condition for dua to be accepted. You don't have to do wasila. If you did it, fine, alhamdulillah. If you don't do it, that's okay as well. So that's a middle ground, and that's the way of Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah. That is the i'tidal of ummah wasat. On the other extreme, there are people who would reject. They would say, you know what, you cannot make Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam or any pious person, once they passed away, a wasila to get your du'as accepted. And they would reject one or two narrations which appeared, Uthman bin Hunayf and Hanif, one of the companion radiyallahu ta'ala anhu, his story with Sayyidina Uthman radiyallahu ta'ala anhu, and the blind man coming and asking. So those few narrations, they would say, oh, they're very weak, and it's not about whether they're weak or not. It doesn't matter, number one. Although there are many scholars who consider those ahadith to be fine as well. And as I said, in the first three generations, Ummah agreed and accepted the fact that you can make dua, in even the fact that Imam Ahmad ibn Hanbal rahmatullah alayhi, in his Majmu'ul Fatawa of Imam Ibn Taymiyyah rahmatullah alayhi, has been recorded as saying, so Imam Ibn Taymiyyah rahmatullah alayhi, first volume, he's saying about Imam Ibn Taymiyyah, Imam Ahmad ibn Hanbal rahmatullah alayhi, that he used to do tawassul with Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's dua, the dua that he would make to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he would do tawassul through Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and he would consider it to be mustahab action. So this was his regular practice. But he would say it's with Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Hence, this is their view. Now, if you look at the Ummah today, the Hanabila, modern Hanabilas, Hanbali Fuqaha, Imam Ibn Taymiyyah was Hanbali as well. Initially, obviously, later on, he had sort of his own different views on many issues, tafarrudat, yet he remained one of the Imams of the time. Anyway, so Imam Ahmad ibn Hanbal would make it recommended. And yet, most Hanabila of the time would not do it these days. And Hanafi, Imam Abu Hanifa would say that don't do it, with the problem there that he wanted to correct. But all Hanafis now accept it to be the way forward. Anyway, Imam Ibn Taymiyyah rahmatullah alayhi was the first person saying that this is impermissible unconditionally. And before that, for 700 years, no one went against this. Do you have to do it? Not at all. You don't have to do tawassul. If you don't want to do, don't do it. If you want to do, you can definitely do it. Final point is that when we do tawassul or wasila, is it that we are donating that reward, or is it the right of that? Not at all. No one is saying that the deeds are added to the account of that person. Clearly not. It's not nothing to do with deeds of the person. So the question, the chapter is closed, they have died, the action of book of deeds is no more there. So how could they? So we're not saying that they would achieve any extra reward to their account for the action that they haven't done. We're not saying that. No one is saying that. What we're saying is that we are showing ourselves to be humble, weak, not worthy of being accepted the dua of. So we're showing our poverty with regards to our action and our neediness to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, our humility and humbleness to say, Ya Allah, we do not deserve that. Yet those pious people, they are amazing. You love them. They deserve you. They deserve you to accept their dua, not because they have any right over you, but rather you gave them such a high rank and status that inshallah ta'ala, when they make dua, you accept it. They are mustajabud da'wah. They are pious people. They, laid their life, they spend their lives in your causes, in your way. So Ya Allah, accept our dua, because we have got love for. These are the companions, these are the Sahaba, these are the ulama, Aimma, Anbiya. We love them. And our connection with them, if you could consider that and accept our deed, that would be great. So this is what we are trying to implore to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Ya Allah, consider them. Give them their due, in a sense that you love them. Based on your awfu bi'ahdi ufi bi'ahdikum. They fulfill their covenant and their promise to you. Oh Allah, you fulfill your promise to them. So, honoring them, accept my dua. This is what we are saying, which actually is a very good thing. It's not that they have got any added deed to their account. Now, when they were alive, they were pious. You can make them a means to get the dua accepted, as in the story of Sayyidina Abbas. When they die, do they become bad? Na'udzubillah. The account is now seized and closed. When they were alive, there was a possibility that they may leave Islam. They may die as a pious people, not obviously Prophet and companions, but the pious people, not talking about sub generally, any other person who is not of that category. Obviously, anyone can go astray. They can apostatize. Do we know about people whether they would die as a Muslim? No, including Sahaba. Do we know that they would stay upon Islam other than prophets? We cannot say, yeah, once they die as a Muslim, we know that they, Alhamdulillah, continue till they breathe their last. Hence, the chances of getting your dua accepted through their means, through their wasila, is higher when they passed away. Because during their lifetime, there was a possibility. If I say, the Imam of my masjid, Ya Allah, consider his white beard, his 50 years worth of imamship in the masjid, his khutbah, his teachings, pious man, may Allah accept my dua through his, he's an amazing man, so just honor him and accept my dua. The chances are that, God forbid, he may turn into atheist, he may leave Islam, he may become apostate at some point in his life. Now, I can make dua through him, but not through the one who's already passed away and is much more pious. Subhanallah. It doesn't make any sense, does it? So we are not saying that they get extra reward or they've got account filled with good deeds, which is continuing, but rather they had it perfected, they kept it intact, they sealed it with their tawheed upon their at the time of their death, so they died as a Muslim. وَلَا تَمُوتُنَّ إِلَّا وَأَنْتُمْ مُسْلِمُونَ. They could manage to live that fantastic life. So they deserve, for that reason, through the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, if Allah wills. It's up to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala whether Allah accepts or not. So that is why. That's one thing. Now, as I said, you don't have to do it. You don't have to do it if you don't want to. So no one said it's a must. None of the Imams ever said it's a must. So asking them for dua is alhamdulillah. Asking wasila of those people is mashallah, is a good thing. There's no harm. But do you see people doing it day in, day out? Some do it, but not all of them. Sometimes you do, sometimes you don't. And by the way, through the righteous action, you can make wasila. What about loving pious people? Is that a sign of piety? Is that a good deed or not? Yes, it is. Loving the friends of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam said, Man ahabba abdan la yuhibbuhu illa lillah. So from the hadith, ثَلَاثُ مَنْ كُنَّ فِيهِ وَجَدَ بِهِنَّ حَلَاوَةَ الْإِيمَانِ. 3 types of people who have tasted the sweetness of faith. So one of them is those who love whomsoever they love for the sake of Allah. So when we love these pious people, is loving these pious people a good deed or not? Yes. So if I say, oh Allah, accept my dua, considering and honoring Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, because I love him, I love Imam Bukhari rahmatullah alayhi, I love Imam Abu Hanifa rahmatullah alayhi, I love Imam Ghazali rahmatullah alayhi, all those pious people. Ya Allah, accept my dua because I have love for them. That is a good deed. So I can make that good deed a wasila. Why can't I? When I can make any good deed wasila, why can't I do with this good deed? So that's anyway another reason to believe that this is perfectly fine. And as I said, it is not, na'udhu billah, showing up that Allah has to do it, but rather imploring, beseeching. When someone is in need, they always try and implore Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with all the different things that they can cling on to. Remember that I did that action at that time. Ya Allah, please. I know I'm very bad. I deserve to be punished, but please, I can't accept it. Ya Allah, don't punish me. Ya Allah, I'm so bad, but I know such and such a pious person. Please consider his status. Oh Allah, please. So when we are in need, we cling on to every little thing that we have, and these are big things. They are amazing things. So one should try and make dua through wasila of the pious people who passed away. If one doesn't want to do it, that's up to them. There is no sin, there is no haramness or dislike in that, but it is preferable to do that way, at least at times, but not all the time. Maybe it's up to you, but I would suggest to don't worry about this too much. Why people differ? They differed for, as I said, last 700 years, and you're not going to change it. Let it be. Accept to disagree, and then inshallah move on. May Allah give us tawfiq to understand and practice